Good morning, everyone. Hey, welcome to our Tuesday video, but for some reason this is Wednesday. I'll tell you more about that here in a little bit. But what steals your peace? I'll tell you what steals my peace. Right now, it's this. I am doing a hem of a wedding gown, and it needs to be moved up this far. But in order to do that, I have to unpick these peaks. So on lace, a lot of times hem lace, there's these large, tall peaks. And I can't just trim those out and move it up because there'd be a lot of holes. So I do have to move, I have to undo all of the stitching. So the problem is that this is a very fine netting that can easily get a hole in it, and they do it with invisible thread. Now, some of them that I get to do, I can get a hold of a little bit of that invisible thread and start pulling, and I can get a whole section out. This has not proved to be the case. Yesterday I worked on this for an hour, and I barely got one of these peaks done, because they've done such tiny stitches. They both have invisible thread on the top and on the bottom on their bobbin thread, and it is so tiny and you cannot see it. And if you get the wrong one, the wrong little spot, so you try to find where it's shiny, but it almost is so tiny that you almost can't see that. So I end up pulling out my glasses and try to get even closer. I have tried to do this under a blue light. I had this great idea that maybe a blue light would make it shine a little bit more, but really a regular light, I can end up finding that little piece, but they are so tiny and tight together that this will be an all-day project just on getting these peaks undone. So my question of the day is for you: what is stealing your peace? Or in the Hebrew word that I call it is shalom, and shalom is even greater than peace. It is the whole encompassing peace and tranquility. It's completeness and wholeness. It's prosperity. It's everything. So when you wish someone shalom, you are wishing them all of those things. But what is stealing your peace? We're going to talk about that in this video. So go ahead and grab a cup of coffee. I'd like to sit with you while I do some of this and chat with you about that. So yes, that is the question of the day. What is stealing your peace? Have you ever sat and thought about that? Have you just been super frustrated in life and just not realized what was stealing your peace? Speaking of that, if you hear noises in the background like drills and saws and stuff like that, it is my husband fixing our privacy paneled fence that allows me to have kind of a private area here in the dress shop. The wind the last couple of days also trying to steal our peace, trying to steal our privacy. So he's fixing that. So if you hear that in the background, just ignore it. It's just saws and drills. And I'm getting a beautiful new privacy fence put up. But I wanted to talk today about all of the exterior things that can steal your peace, and one in specifically. But think about all those. I have, a really long list of all of those things that some things I can change and some things I can't change. And if you are interested in finding more peace, please subscribe and hit the bell. This is Finding Shalom, and I am Christa. And we talk about finding peace, and I also do videos on all the things that bring me peace, including on Fridays we do a Bible study. I also do a little bit of my sewing since I am a seamstress. And here pretty soon I am going to even add a little gardening in here, because that is part of my exterior or external peace. Being in the garden, having a little garden therapy, that brings me peace. And believe it or not, sewing brings me peace to a certain point. Sometimes a lot of the work is mindless, where you can just sit and stitch, and it clears my mind, and or I could do something creative, and creative things bring me peace. But today we're going to talk about something that is probably the hardest thing for me, and the thing that steals my peace more often than not. And it's also the reason why I closed my retail business, my bridal shop, because it's my schedule. It's my to-do list. And when I had my bridal shop, my to-do list was so great that nothing else could fit in. I didn't have time for family. I haven't been camping since I opened my bridal shop because the weekends were really important for sales. So we haven't been camping, or we haven't really done very many vacations, stuff like that. If I did, I had to close down the whole shop and chance losing a lot of sales, which were hard. So when you are living a sales-driven life, that kind of it's like, well, if we close down, I'm not going to be able to pay the bills. And so it really became overwhelming. So I thought this year, it's 1 year since I closed that business, I thought, I don't know why I had images of me hanging out in hammocks and just playing in my garden and having time with family. I don't know if I thought I had like 3 calendars for myself, but my schedule is full again. Partially because I filled it, partially because circumstances filled it, partially because other people filled it. So today we're going to be talking about, what to do with your schedule, and how if you're cramming too much into this, you're not going to have time for rest. You're not going to have time to reflect or have peace. You're not going to have time for the hobbies, the things that kind of bring you joy. You have to have time to have joy. With my retail business, I got to the point where holidays were even really annoying because I didn't have time to do them, and it was so much work. And so I never got to celebrate. I never got to enjoy. I never got to do things here just for me, or just for my family, or just for my marriage. So let's talk about that. How can you stop from cramming your schedule so far? First, I think what we have to do is we have to talk about seasons. That, first of all, there are different seasons of your life. You might be in a season where you have small children and they are all going, to different events and activities or things that they have to do. Some of those things you can cut out. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit. You might be going through a season of your life that, when I was working the retail world, certain seasons, because I was in bridal, were very heavy, and then other seasons were quiet. So that, you might be in different seasons. You have to change that and be flexible to all of that. But I think the first step that you want to do when trying to reevaluate your schedule and trying to make room for some peace in your life is, number 1, you need to sit down with your calendar and with your schedule book, with your children's school book, of their scheduled things, and you've got to write everything out. Just kind of, because sometimes we don't even know the multitude of what we have going on. We don't know what we have until we write it all down or put it all. It's the same with a budget. You start to write down everything you're spending money on, and you realize, oh my gosh, this is a bigger problem than I thought it was. So step number one, you're going to write down a list of your commitments, your daily, your weekly, your monthly, and all your to-dos. Just write all those out. Okay, so step 1 is make a list of your commitments and daily, weekly to-do list. So you want to write it all down, and also write down where you're feeling a pull. Do you have a relative that's wanting more and more of your time, or a friend that's wanting more and more of your time? Write that down, even if it's not on your schedule. Write down things that you wish you could do, like your, like your wish list, stuff like that. Just write down all of those kind of things. And then also keep in mind seasons. You're probably going to have to do this for multiple seasons. This is not like a one and done thing. This is, you're going to write this all down for this season. Maybe you're in the school season, and then in summer it's going to be totally different. Maybe you're in a season of your life, not just throughout the year, that type of a season, but maybe you're in a season where you have teenagers, and then later on you're an empty nester, or later on so there's different kinds of seasons. So you're going to want to readjust your schedule. For me, I have readjusted my schedule about 3 or 4 times just since I quit my retail business. And here I am, very frustrated and feeling like it's all jarbled, just because different things got added onto my plate. I'm also running behind in things, and I need more time for certain things. It's also the beginning of spring, and I really want to get out in the garden. And so I'm looking at my schedule and saying, where can I get the work I need to get done? There's some things on your list that are going to be like jobs. There's not much you can do if you got to make money to pay the bills. You might be able to go out and get another job, later on, as we're talking about priorities and stuff. Maybe you'll be able to switch your job, but most likely the job you have is going to be the job you have. So that's kind of a concrete, can't be moved kind of a thing. Some stuff with your children might be a concrete, can't be moved kind of a thing. Things with your husband, or your wife, or whatever might be that concrete, can't be moved thing. So first you're going to just write everything out. Just spill it all out. It doesn't have to be in any kind of order. Just make sure you've got a list. And then your second one is, we're going to take that list. Now we're going to evaluate what is most important to you. So to evaluate what is most important to you, you need to be thinking about, a good way to do it is, okay, if for some reason you only had a couple hours a day, or you had a short, window of time, and you could only do one item on all of your list, all the things you've written down, if you could only do one thing, what would you want it to be? What's the most important thing? And think about, what do you want your story to be? You get to write your own story for this season of your life, for all seasons of your life. So what do you want? What do you most value? And what's most important to you? Now, like I said, some things cannot be changed. They are concrete. We're not talking about those. We're talking about the extra stuff, the stuff that we get to decide where we're spending our time. Find out what you want your story to look like with your children, if they're of age, with your husband, with your peace. Do you need some quiet time? And then think about, if you only had time to do 2 items, what would those 2 items be? And then so on, 3 items and 4 items. If people at the end of their life, they suddenly reevaluate everything and they put what's most important first. So think about that. If you were going to die in a week, what would be the most important things? Make sure that you are writing your story and that your schedule reflects that, that it says, I want to be this kind of a family, or something like that. So, and also keep in mind you have seasons. There are seasons of your life. Not only are there seasons throughout one year, you might, if you have children, have a school season and your schedule has to look like this. But maybe you can cut out some of those activities for your children. Maybe instead of each of your children being involved in 2 activities, maybe they could each only be involved in 1 activity. Where can you make some cuts? Where can you do the most important thing? If your children have to choose between basketball and track, which one's more important to them? Let them focus and teach them early on to narrow their focus. And that will help you narrow your focus. But just know that for some seasons, you're going to be, in school season and you're chasing after all of those kind of activities. Then you have summer season. What does that look like? It's entertaining the kids. It's stuff like that. Or there could be seasons of your life. There are times that you are in the season of having small children. There are seasons when you have teenagers. There are seasons when you're an empty nester. There are seasons when you are a retiree. There are seasons, just as I had the season where I ran a retail bridal shop. And now I'm in a season where I'm just in the alterations and I should have more time, but that's been the frustrating thing. So I need to look at everything, figure out what my concrete have to do's, figure out what sounds good, but maybe not good. It's not that I'm choosing between good and bad. I'm choosing between good and good, or good and better. I want the better. So I have to say no to some good things in order for me to have the better. And so that's the kind of decisions you're going to make in that process. And that brings us to step number 3. And that is you're going to have to learn how to say no. Yes, you're going to have to learn how to say no. That's number 3. So yes, this is probably my hardest lesson, is why is it that I cannot say no? And that's the question I want you to ask yourself. What is the reason why you can't say no to fill in the blank? So there's going to be a lot of reasons. Some of it is you can't say no because financially you've got to pay the bills. Okay? So that's a good reason not to say no. Some of it is going to be that you have a family obligation. And those can be good or bad. You've got to decide, there are people in your life that right now it's frustrating, but someday they won't be here. So you need to make those decisions that, yes, I'm going to spend time here because someday we're not going to have this. So you're in that season where you've got to make that, a yes instead of a no. But think about other things. I've written some stuff down here. Are you saying no out of guilt? That's a big one for me. Are you saying no because you feel guilty because nobody else is doing it, or you feel obligated to do it? But if you said no, would you give somebody else the opportunity to be able to do it? Like, say, helping out at church or volunteering at the school or whatever. Is it a valid no or a valid yes? Could you say no and still keep with your priorities, the things that are important to you, your value system? Are you, not saying no because it's biblical, your responsibility, or are you people pleasing? That's another thing. I have often taken alterations not because I had time in my schedule or needed the money, but because I just couldn't say no. I was trying to make sure I was everybody's hero. And then all that does for me is make it so that my family gets the short end of the stick. So I have to learn how to say no in those cases. Or am I not saying, or am I saying yes instead of no because I need the money? I mean, that might be a different situation. So you got to, figure out why. Another one I have written down is image. Are you afraid you want to be that hero to everybody and say yes to everything? Why are you saying yes instead of no? Now, say yes to the good things or the better things, but you might have to say no to some pretty good things. And that's where I'm struggling right now. There are so many things in my life right now. After I retired, I think everybody was like, oh, now you'll have time for this. I have all these people coming out of the woodwork saying, oh, you're finally going to have time for this. And they're throwing a lot on my plate. And it's good stuff. But I got to say no so that I have the time that I planned on having. And the other thing is my own image or obligations or my own ideas. I, for some reason, thought I would have time for 3 people. I have no idea what I was thinking, but I was like, oh, now that I'm going to retire from retail, I could do this and this and this, and they're all really good. I want to help people learn how to sew, but I don't have time for it. I want to mentor people. I started a group for seamstresses. I want to be really involved in that. I started way too many things. And so now I've got to put those all out and figure out what's the best choice for me. And then I need to narrow out my schedule. So I hope you guys can do that by saying no to some really amazing things. And that's the hardest part. And that brings us to number 4, and that is to be flexible. So in order to have peace, not only do you have to say no, you have to evaluate, you have to schedule yourself some time to rest. Once you get this schedule perfected, guarantee something's going to come in and throw the whole thing in a monkey wrench in a whatever they say, but something's going to mess it all up. And that's where I'm at right now. There's been a lot of things thrown into the mix that have messed up that perfect thing. And life is just like that. If you want to keep your peace, you've got to be flexible. You got to realize, oh, I got to do another adjusting. It's a constant adjusting. This is, like I said at the beginning, this is not a one and done. This is a constantly, evaluate, maybe even monthly, at the beginning of the month. What can I do better this month, and lay it all out. And then just know emergencies are going to come. And sometimes the being flexible is being the most like Jesus. Notice he did most of his miracles and most of his amazing acts and talks with people on his way to do something. And sometimes we just have to throw out the schedule and just follow where God is leading. And sometimes that's next to a well, like the woman at the well. He met her on his way to Jerusalem. Jesus often was on the way somewhere and somebody came along and interrupted, and those ended up to be the most amazing moments. So leave a little wiggle room in your schedule for these impromptu, amazing moments. Don't schedule yourself down to so minute of a schedule that one little thing will just throw the whole thing off. Take the time for a little bit of recklessness. So I don't know if that helped you at all. This week I am completely reevaluating my schedule, trying to fix it so that I can save some time to savor, to hang out in the garden, to maybe, you know, get up a little earlier to do some of the sewing so that I have some time in the afternoon when it's a little warmer to do a little gardening. And I would love to hear in the comments what some of your scheduling problems are, what is stealing your peace in your schedule, how you think you might be able to change that, maybe some tricks on how you changed your schedule or got rid of something or said no and was able to free up to a more peaceful, amazing life. I hope that you guys can find some peace this coming up spring season and this coming up year, and keep being flexible, keep reevaluating, watch for those seasons of life, and I hope God blesses you with some amazing seasons of rest and relaxation. I love you all. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you in the next video. Shalom, my dear friends. Love you guys.